We have an alliance between the Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC. They have officially announced it. And this is, of course, countering what the SEC has done by adding Texas and Oklahoma. The three Power 5 conferences, Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC, are going to work together on several fronts, such as possible playoff expansion and scheduling, which would also include men's and women's basketball. The scheduling component is going to wait a bit since games have already been set for years in advance. But we're going to find out more on this from our Dennis Dodd, who was on the press conference call earlier this afternoon. Let's bring in Dennis now. We chatted before this became official, and now that we have heard from these conferences, have we learned anything more about what exactly this is?
Chris, short on details, long on philosophy. These three commissioners basically joined hands in the middle of a Zoom call and said, we're going to fight the SEC. No, they did not say those words, but everything that came out of their mouths was a direct shot at the SEC. They talked about preserving a belief system, the collegiate model. There had to be goodness come back into college athletics. That was from Kevin Warren. And you know who they're talking about. I had the first question on the call, and I said, do you support the 12-team playoff as proposed? None of them would say yes. But by not saying yes, they meant no, because the current format with the 12 teams, 6 conference champions and 6 at large, favors the SEC since they took Texas and Oklahoma. In fact, it favored them before that. So this kind of confirms what a lot of people in the industry think right now. The playoff is going to have to be rethought, remodeled, especially with those three gentlemen in the room who weren't there or didn't even have jobs as commissioners when this thing was proposed and worked on 2 years ago. So this is their move. They're going to have some sort of scheduling alliance. It's going to take years to figure out. That's really a minor part of it now. They are going into the room in the conference, in the playoff discussions and the governance talks with the NCAA, I think, with guns blazing.
So the SEC, obviously, the ones who push this playoff expansion forward, along with the Big 12, which may no longer exist soon, and Notre Dame. Now, these three conferences, ACC, Big 10, Pac-12, what would you guess, or maybe what would you take out of what you've heard that they would want to have happen to playoff expansion? Because you'd think they want more than 4, because often a conference like the Pac-12 is left out.
Oh, I think 12 is the number, but they have to talk about things about structure and access and who's going to get in and how many teams from one conference are going to get in. And basically, Greg Sankey standing up in front of those commissioners on September 28th in Dallas and saying, why didn't you tell us about this? What should we expect from you in the future? Are you done poaching teams? Because what these three commissioners did today is basically say conference realignment at the top is off for now. There is no signed agreement, by the way, Chris. They were asked that. There's no contract in this, so I said it's all philosophical. They said they could trust each other and look each other in the eye. So that's what this is about for now.
This day and age, after what we saw from Texas and Oklahoma and the Big 12, how can you say that? Really? I mean, how can you say that, yeah, we can just do a handshake agreement and everybody's just going to fall in line?
Well, how can you say that when Larry Scott tried to poach 6 Big 12 teams, 10 years ago? Jim Delaney, busted apart part of the ACC, and the Big 12 taking Nebraska and Maryland. All these conferences have done it. John Swofford, I called him the silent assassin when he basically broke up the Big East, taking Miami, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, all those teams, Virginia Tech. Everybody's at fault. There's no innocence here. It's just that these are operating in their interest right now. What those interests are specifically will reveal themselves over the next few weeks and months, but I don't think there are any innocents here.
Dennis, how does Notre Dame factor into this?
Notre Dame's a part of it. There are 41 teams, Notre Dame being the 41st, still is an independent in football, and according to reports, they will play in this non-conference scheduling agreement, which includes the 3 conferences, each conference playing one team from the other 2 conferences in a non-conference football game. And if Notre Dame is scheduled, they would count as an ACC team. So Notre Dame's in favor of it, but Notre Dame's not, they have their access in a 12-team playoff. They're absolutely happy with it, because I think that's not going to change for them. But they went along with this because it made sense, because they're an ACC partner.
You were on that call earlier with the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC. Let's play a little bit of that and the words from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips.
The combination of national games and having a national impact and influence are key elements of this collaboration and do help create a degree of certainty in an environment that has become increasingly unstable. We recognize that there is still work to be done and decisions to be made regarding future scheduling frameworks. We are grateful to the 11 members of our athletic director subcommittee who will focus on the specific areas of scheduling for consideration. On behalf of the ACC, we are truly honored to be an enthusiastic member of this alliance and look forward to the possibilities that lie ahead. And once again, my sincere appreciation to Commissioners Warren and Kliavkoff and our CEOs and ADs for their leadership and support.
All right, Dennis, so if you're in the ACC or the Big Ten or the Pac-12, or you're Notre Dame and you're a part of this, or you're in the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma included, you're feeling good about where things are going. But if you're one of these 8 schools remaining in the Big 12, where are you right now? What do you do if you're a president and athletic director of, let's just say, a Kansas?
Well, you're on the outside looking in, and virtually with no hope of joining this group, which has now become a de facto Power 4. They were asked, the commissioners, why isn't the Big 12 in this discussion? Do you fear for the Big 12 survival? And Jim Phillips said something to the point of, we need the Big 12 to be good. We have to have the Big 12 to be good. But look, there's going to come an inflection point, Chris, and I tell you when it's going to come. Whenever those commissioners get in that room and they decide on what the playoff's going to look like, they themselves are going to decide what the revenue split is. And they will decide if the Big 12 is a major conference or not when they do that revenue split. And the way things are now, there's no combination of teams that could be added to the Big 12, or the Big 12 could join from another conference in the Power 4 that could help them be a major conference again. And I think that's the sad part of this, that a conference has been cut out, whether it's the Big 12 or the American. It looks like one of those is going to cease to exist. And who profits from it? Well, ESPN doesn't have to pay rights fees for that conference anymore. ESPN profited from cutting out Fox and half the value of the Big 12, and they took Texas and Oklahoma. So you can see what's at play here. They're saying all the right things about the Big 12, but if the Big 12 wasn't at this call, that's all you need to know about the Big 12 right now.
Hard to imagine seeing a school like Kansas being, especially in men's basketball, not being in a major conference. But we'll see how things unfold. Certainly a lot more to play out. But as it pertains to this alliance, Dennis, what's the next thing that these conferences are going to work to accomplish?
They will meet in person September 28th in Dallas for a previously scheduled meeting with an update to the presidents, the 11 presidents and chancellors that oversee the college football playoff. And they'll share their ideas. They've gone back to campus. They've talked to players, coaches, what they want to look like. But I think in that meeting, we'll find out that this thing is a long way from fruition. I'm talking about expansion and what it will look like. Again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying the timeline is a bit farther out now because everything I've articulated. The SEC has to understand that the playoff as proposed, at least that's what I'm hearing today, is not going to fly. So they have to rethink this thing.
Dennis, you also cover basketball for us. Football runs everything. I mean, that's where the money is. But how does basketball factor into this alliance between 3 major conferences?
Yeah, there will be games. There'll be non-conference games. Basketball and any of the finances of college athletics only counts for about 20% of the media rights. And you referenced Kansas before, and that's the shame of it. A top 5 all-time basketball program looks like right now it will be playing games in the American or the Mountain West or something like that. Now, can Kansas become like a Gonzaga and play in a lesser conference and schedule up and play those teams because of their reputation and still get a higher seed in the tournament? Absolutely, it's Kansas. But I think it's the whole idea that a program like Kansas, and even Kansas State, which has a rich NCAA tournament history as well, will not be taken along because of basketball. It just won't. Every source I talk to tells me there's no value for Kansas in the Big Ten and no value for any Big Ten school in the Pac-12 right now.
It's just terrible for these programs to have to be thinking about this as we go into the college football season, although Kansas normally doesn't have much to think about during college football season unless it's when is the first college basketball game of the season. Dennis Dodd joining us here on CBS Sports HQ as the three conferences make it official today: Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC, with an alliance, but nothing set in stone. There's no agreement signed on paper, just a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, a handshake. I'm sure this will be a topic on the Cover 3 podcast covering all things college football. Download and follow today. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.